So usually when we a regular 5-day week here is maybe one day I'm going to be making something for the store. It might be like goblets or something. The next day somebody might come in and hire us to make a 30-inch globe or something. The next day it might be a 12-year-old's drawing. So we do a lot of different things here. And usually by the end of the week, I'm pretty gassed. So, it's a typical 5 days a week, like a normal adult job. So at the end of the week, I'm usually, it's hard for me to come in here and be creative. We can use the shop when the museum is closed. That's one of the benefits of working here. So to have a full week in this shop is just, it's a huge, huge benefit. Let's just make sure it works. Use the side arrows, right? So up here on the screen, this is one of the very first things I made out of glass. So we all got to start somewhere, and we're all pretty terrible at this when we first start. And that's probably the third piece I made, and that was in November of '96. So I was born in 1973. You guys can do the math. That's me, my mom, my little brother. I was born in Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. I grew up in the Bay Area, California, Vallejo. It's about 30 miles from San Francisco. I didn't know this, but it's called the City of Opportunity. I spent my early teen years skating and destroying things. Growing up, Vallejo was definitely a little rough, and in my teen years, I was very rough. By my early 20s, my friends were robbing banks, committing armed robbery, carjacking, some really bad stuff. But I knew that wasn't me. And after some of my friends ended up going to the state pen, I was like, I'm going to go in the opposite direction, and started to be kind of a dirty hippie. So that was in my early 20s, and so I started getting in touch with nature, spent a lot of time in the woods. And that led me to my second best job ever. I was an assistant campground host for 2 summers in 1994 and 95 in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I lived in my tent and cleaned campgrounds, chopped wood, went fishing pretty much every day. It was my second best job. After that, I spent some time hitchhiking around Northern California and ended up working at a farm that I told my parents was a garlic farm. It wasn't a garlic farm. I made a lot of money there. I was paid good money, and ended up buying this 1953 Chevy school bus with one of the people that I worked on the farm with. And we moved to, my mom was living in Benicia, California, so I kind of came back to where my family was in that bus, and purely by chance, we ended up parking this bus across the street from a glass studio. There's a guy there that owned a warehouse, and he let us park it there. He didn't know we were living in the bus, but you can see it says glass studios there. There was 4 glass studios there in the 90s. There are 0 there now. So in November of '96, this glass shop was across the street from where my bus was parked, and I got a job there at Smyers Glass. I started in the cold shop there. That means like grinding the glass when it's cold. I didn't really get to touch the hot stuff at first. We made mold-blown goblets, lighting. I also, I swept the floors. I shoveled the glass into the furnace. Every Friday night we could use whatever was left over in the furnace, and I took advantage of that. Living across the street, I would stay there till the morning paper was delivered, back when that used to happen. It would be about 5 a.m. So every Friday night, I would stay there, and that's kind of how I learned. So eventually I got moved up to a position on the hot shop floor, and after about 3 years, I had learned all I could do there. When I told my boss that I was going to quit there, he actually said, "What do you think you're going to do? Move to Seattle and work with people like Dante?" Dante is like one of the best glass blowers in the world, and he's from this area. So I actually have worked with Dante, and we're friends now. Me and the guy that owned that shop, and he's cool with that. So in '99, I ended up in Sonoma, California, and I met fresh out of college Ben Cobb. Ben's over there. He's helping me today. He's the hot shop director here. And we worked together for about a year there in Sonoma. And he told me he was going to move to Tacoma and work at this new glass museum that they were building. And he encouraged me to do the same thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough for that. At this point, I'd been blowing glass for nearly 6 years, and it was all just kind of self-taught. Nothing, I hadn't taken any classes or anything, so I just didn't really think I was good enough. But I actually did end up getting a job here in August of '02, and at that point, I've been blowing glass about 6 years. And I was hired as the hot shop starter. That means you're assisting, you're starting the pieces, not really the one making the pieces, but you might be the one catching the piece. And as you could see here, I was very nervous. Look at my eyes. But eventually I settled down, and it's a great job. We have fun here. We wouldn't do this if we didn't love it. I could make a lot more money if I was a plumber, but I probably wouldn't get invited to demonstrate my plumbing skills all over the world. So yeah, sometimes we use like corn to shape glass. So since I've been here, I've made telephones, I've made headphones, I've made dream homes, I've made giant-sized goblets, lifeguards chairs, pickup trucks, turned child's drawings into masterpieces. Here's one of the happy winners of the Kids Design Glass program. It's one of our favorite things to do here, and I really credit this program to pushing my skill level to feel like there's no bounds to what we can do out here. If we can think it up, we can, as a team with this particular team and in this particular studio, we can figure out how to make it. This is arguably the best glass blower in the world, and this is me assisting him, and this was one of my scarier moments in my career. Actually, the second time I brought this guy a punny was the scarier, and you can ask me about that later. I get to work with my friends. Even my mom came in, and she worked doors for us one time during my residency. That's her in the middle there. Get to work inside this beautiful, iconic 90-foot cone. There's usually different projects every week. Like I told you guys, like we don't do the same thing day to day usually. Next week though, we're going to be making goblets for like 3 or 4 days in a row. But it pays the bills, and makes us much better glass workers. I get to help inspire the next generation of glass blowers. Every year we have the Hilltop Artists here to help build or make their centerpieces. Hilltops uses glass arts to connect young people from diverse cultural and economic backgrounds to better futures. So I've watched a lot of these kids grow into successful young adults working in the glass field. One of the guys helping me today, Jack Spitzer, he's part of that program, and I've known him since he was born. I've visited the local middle school where glass blowing is taught, and I get a demo for them. Also go to the local high school where glass is taught and do demos there. So I've been blowing glass now for 27 years, and this is a collection of all my tools. The most important tool, though, is your hands. So there's like thousands of dollars here worth of tools, but the hands are the most important. So we're looking at 2006 now. This is about 10 years of blowing glass, and at this point, I made a lot of different things. I didn't really make anything that I felt like I want to put my name on this, put this in a gallery, but in 2006, I started really focusing and trying to make a series of work, and these are the very first things I made that I started showing in galleries. These were called columns. So you can, if you see my work here on the pedestal, you'll see how this kind of progresses. I really love the thick glass and the optical qualities of glass. After that, around '07, I started making these. They're called cherry bombs. That progressed into firecrackers. These are from '09. I really want to make these again. I've only made about, I don't know, 10, maybe 12 of these things. Biggest ones are about 3 feet tall. In 2012, I was in a group show at the Traver Gallery. It's called 12 Hands, 60 Toes. This is one of my favorites from that show. It was a show that was a survey of work from the first 10 years of Museum of Glass employees. So there were 6 of us, so 12 hands and 60 toes. Kind of talks about how, it takes the whole team and always being on your toes. This piece is now in the collection of Elton John. So my first solo show is titled Center of Gravity. That was 2014. This was at Vetri. So when you blow glass and you're making vessels, center is very important. And as you can see with my work, I still really strive for center. It's not always there, but if I can fool you to think everything's center, that's what I'm after. This one's from 2016. This one's about 31 inches tall. This one was from that show. It was also shown in France, Biot, France, and then it traveled back here, and now it's in the Museum of Glass's permanent collection. This was a kind of a milestone for me. This was a really big technical piece. We actually made a couple of these, went to lunch. I had a residency here in, I think, 2016, and we took lunch. We came back. I went to go check on the annealer, the oven where it cools down, and something had malfunctioned in that annealer, and it shot up to about near 2,000 degrees, and I opened the oven, and it was a puddle, so we did it again. Here's a couple more from that show. That show is called Based. So I started using the solid glass on the bases of these. I really love the way the glass really eats up the light. Glass has a lot of qualities to it. When you walk through the gallery, you probably look at some things and you're like, wow, that's made out of glass. Like when you see my work, I want you to know it's made out of glass, and the only reason to make these is to make them out of glass. Like there's no other material that would translate. If I made these out of ceramics or metal or wood, they just wouldn't. They wouldn't do it for me. It's all about the qualities of glass, and that's what I really love. And I could go and you could make all these parts separate and glue them together, and that's not discounting that, but if I were to go that route, I would just be bored because I don't know how to do that cold side of glass. There are some people who do some really interesting work that is assembled when it's cold. It just, for me, it's kind of high stakes, high reward. That one's about 2 feet tall. It's called Marker from 2016. This is from a show that I had in Florida at the Duncan McClellan Gallery, 2017. The show is called Composed Optics. The tallest one is about 33 inches. This is my first piece where I did like solid glass on the top. If you look at this one, this is solid. So this one, it is hollow up here. So if you want to put some flowers in there, it's still technically a vase, but making the top solid basically renders it useless as a vessel of any sort. So it kind of, they're really meant to just kind of be beautiful things to look at and show off the material. Like this one is totally solid. The only disadvantage to doing all this solid stuff is it just gets heavy and it's harder to ship. It's harder to lift. This one's called Dart. I named this one Dart because it actually, when our cold worker, Kristen Elliott, was cold working this, it kind of slid on the wheel and bonked her in the head, so I called it Dart. So in 2018, I applied to be in the Bellevue Arts Museum Glass Biennale, and they were looking for proposals for new work, and I proposed to make a small grouping of works that would use texture inspired from traditional Murinese cold working techniques, but mimic them in the hot shop. This grouping was called Wave, Scope, Arrow, a textural study. That's one of them, that's wave. So you can see that texture in the bottom. When it's cold, it's called batuto, which means hammered. Here's a piece from the 30s from Carlo Scarpa, Vanini. So this is kind of the look I was going for, but I was doing it in the hot shop, which usually the vessel's made, it's taken into the cold shop, and then it's ground on. You push it into an abrasive wheel thousands of times, it looks like, to get that battered texture. So these are from the 30s. This one's from the 50s, from Vanini's Carlo Scarpa. That technique is called inciso, so like incised cut. So those are the kind of like textures I was going for. And as far as I know, there wasn't really anybody doing that with the glass, so it was really fun for me. And the difference between doing it hot and cold is when it's hot, it's polished, and you really get all these like 1,000 different little lenses on the bottom. So when I did this, I really do have a reverence for tradition. I talked to this guy, Matteo Seguso, who is a glass engraver from Murano, and asked him how he felt about it, and he was very supportive and said he's like, it's not batuto, but it's very cool, and I'm like, that's fine with me. Like him saying it's very cool was really an honor, I guess, a compliment. I actually went to his studio in Murano, and he gave me a little lesson engraving, so I tried to do like a little batuto on a glass. It wasn't so beautiful. I also went to these guys' studios, the Faro brothers, who are known for their carving. You can see one of those pieces has like that nice batuto pattern, and they were very excited about it too, that it was new and it was different, and then I was doing it hot. They were very supportive too. So, that I think after that show, I really was just inspired. I was making work. I was working 6 days a week. This is 2018, 2019, so there's a little detail. And you look at each one of those little lenses, or those, battered marks, they each become like a little lens and really reflect the glass. And that bottom part is blown too, so you get some optics from that interior bubble. But yeah, at this point, I'm rolling. Like, I'm making work all the time, pushing it. This one was called Stopper, so a lot of people say that my work kind of looks like perfume bottles. I'm definitely, I get inspired by every day just beautiful objects. I think skylines, always look cool to me. Perfume bottles, I mean, who doesn't love a perfume bottle? They're beautiful. You can see how that interior bubble, really reflects the glass too. So, and this is called bearing. It's about 22 inches high, and this is the first time I started using this technique called granulare, which is using different viscosity glasses. So those little green bumps up top is achieved by using basically a really stiff glass with surrounded by a regular kind of softer glass. So when you blow it up, the stiff glass doesn't really move, and you're left with those bumps. It's a detail shot of that batuto. That last piece, if you were in here for the last piece, I don't know if you guys, it's the exact same color combo as this. This one's called Passage, and I started using these arches in the work. These are really technically challenging, and I credit this place and this team for helping me kind of figure these things out. We made some yesterday. Yesterday I made probably the most complex things I've ever made. So I like to shoot these in a group too. I just think they look really cool as a group. The tallest one is about 27.5 inches, and some of these are available at the Duncan McClellan Gallery in Florida. So in November of 2019, I had another residency here at MOG, and again, I'm just like, I'm rolling. I'm really getting into it, you know. That's the piece. Whoops. Sorry about that. Like, I'm rolling. These are, you know, approaching 3 feet. This one's 34 inches by 8, so really just in the groove now, you know. This is 2019. We all know what's going to happen. This piece was called ambit, and the definition of ambit is the scope, extent, or bounds of something. So when I made this, I just felt like there's no way I can like push this any further. This one was 3 feet tall. That arch is just so delicate. And actually, when we made this, when we went to knock it off, the top just fell on the ground. It came off. And if you were watching when we were working earlier, there's one person catching it, one person with some gloves on supporting the top. That's because of this piece. So I actually made another top and had my cold worker glue the top. And this is one of the very few things that's glued together. It's kind of a secret. Don't tell anybody. But yeah, now I feel like I need to maybe rename this, because the thing we made yesterday was the ambit. So yeah, COVID hit, and I can't, it's like such a blur, but I made this in 2021 during COVID, and we made this with, we all were wearing masks, and we had to actually pump the glass up with these little blood pressure pumps that would go over the mouthpiece that we usually blow in. So basically, since COVID, I haven't made anything. You know, I had a little residency out in Kansas City where I was teaching, and I made, you know, 3 days of work in a different studio with different people, and that kind of got me going a little bit. But it's, you know, this studio is probably it's one of the best in the world, and this team is incredible too. We have people come here from all over the world to work with us. There's not a lot of people who blow glass 5 days a week anymore, and there's not a lot of people who have been working together for 20 years. Ben and I have been working together for 22. I think Sarah, like 16 years. So we just we speak the same language. So these are really the last things I've made since COVID. And I got them photographed in 2021 during COVID, but I have not really, I've been scared to work, so having this week has been really cool to kind of get back on the horse. So thanks again to the Walker Foundation for supporting this residency. So that's enough about glass. But so other than glass, what I really, really love to do, and then what I'm thinking about today, is fly fishing. Yeah, it's kind of fly fishing, fly tying. One of my favorite forms of that is winter steelhead. It's really, really difficult. It's high risk, high reward. It's kind of cold, miserable conditions. Steelhead, if you don't know, are rainbow trout that live their adult life in the ocean, return to the river to spawn. Also love foraging for mushrooms. Here's one of my favorite and very rare find is a cauliflower mushroom, and it's just about mushroom season too. My mom comes up and from California, and she loves to forage too. These are some white chanterelles and a cauliflower we found. I also recently started playing on a softball team. It's mainly glass people. We're called the Hilltop Burners. We're terrible, but it's really fun. So I wish I would have done this like in my 30s. I just turned 50 this year, so a little sore. I actually played a doubleheader this Friday, but yes, what was awesome is I did that on Friday night, came in here yesterday, and made the craziest thing of my life. So it's not too bad getting old. There's my animal family. There's Frankie, Sadie, my dog-in-law, and Gary. They're all buddies. And I just got married last year to my wonderful wife, Alex. We actually met here. And if this doesn't work out, I'm going to try to start a modeling career. So just want to say thanks again to everybody. Thanks for listening to me ramble on. I hope you come and watch our demo. We're going to eat some lunch and then make some more glass. So anybody have any questions?
I have a couple for you, Gabe.
Okay. Comments, concerns?
From the text, so we got a great question about how you prepare for a residency. Do you sketch? Do you, what do you need to do to get ready to do something intensive like this for a week?
So for this residency, I worked 2 weekends making all these cups. There was a ton of these cups when we first started the residency. So yeah, what I usually first do is just throw in a bunch of colors that I like, and I make all these cups, and then I look at the cups, and then I figure out my color combinations. So throughout the week, we've been stuffing those cups and making all these solid parts. So now I have a lot of these things that I can look at, kind of compare how the colors are gonna look together. I spent a couple days pulling all this cane. The cane is like getting all this lacy goodness. I spent day pulling all this Marini and chopping it. So, you know, we pull these lengths of that stuff, and then I cut it up into, you know, a bunch of little tiles and then arrange them like this. So that's what I was spending all morning. So there's a lot of prep, and I do sketch. I've been sketching the things out on the floor. This week I've been kind of working on kind of just 2 forms. This form was kind of, we didn't want to do this, but we had a little mishap. So I just made this just because it was quicker than making what I originally want to make. So I have spent a lot of time in my sketchbook. I'm not very good at drawing it. They look kind of like chicken scratch, but I've gotten better at it. Does that answer the question?
Another visitor wanted to share, first of all, that they really enjoy your use of titles for your work, and they were wondering which comes first, the piece or the title?
Oh, piece, always. Oh, titles are so hard, and I'm like, I never remember them. I remember the one Ambit because it was like, that's like the pinnacle. So maybe I'll name the next one Pinnacle, the hardest one. But like, I don't know, hopefully I keep getting better at this, you know. I've been doing it for 27 years, and I feel like I still keep getting better, which is awesome.
Morgan was wondering if you could explain your use of texture. Do you think about the contrast between smooth and bumpy, for example?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And in an ideal world, and when I have enough time, like, I really love doing like the innie outie type thing. So this like bumpy texture, like pairing it with the, you know, the kind of reverse of that. So, you know, the lacy stuff I think looks really nice with this. But sometimes just because of time and materials, I'll switch those back and forth. So like, yeah, this one has the batuto, the hot batuto, but it also has the lace. I think it still works together, but I love the texture. You know, anything that's going to help out with the optics, which it does. The texture helps out with the optics a lot. But man, I just get impatient sometimes. It takes, I don't know, you guys have seen how long it takes, and it's hot. When I'm texturing it, I'm sitting in this little stool, and I'm right here, and this thing is 2,100 degrees. So it's so hot and uncomfortable.
Another visitor was asking, and you mentioned a couple times in your talk about breaking or things failing while you work.
Yep.
A visitor was wondering what that is like when you're in the zone and how you recover from things that break.
I usually go, there's like a little area behind the furnace. I usually go back there and I cry a little bit. I got a little teddy bear back there. I hold it tight, and then I hit it again. That's it.
What advice would you give somebody who's trying to convince their parents to let them go to art school?
Well, I didn't go to art school, so I dropped out of school I actually was going back to college and got that job at the glass studio, so I'm probably not the best one to ask. I would say if you're going to go to art school, be a fancy artist, don't be a glass person. You can learn how to blow glass in a production studio. If you're creative, yeah, go to art school and learn to be an artist and learn to blow glass somewhere else. That's my frank answer, yes.
And then the last one's from me. So for everybody that's listening, the museum has hosted over 750 visiting artists. Many of those Gabe has helped and learned from. Something I've always admired when I hear you talk about your work, Gabe, is your respect for the past and for studio glass techniques, but your vision to stay true to what glass does, but create something contemporary. So my question is, where do you think glass needs to go next?
I think glass needs to go in everybody's homes because it's beautiful. Like, you guys need to buy some glass. Like, you got some money, buy some glass. It's beautiful. And we sweat and we work. I've dedicated my life to this. Support us. Because we're trying to make the world, artists are trying to make the world more beautiful. These things catch beautiful light and you'll look at them and they'll make you smile. So glass needs to go in everybody's home.
I couldn't agree more. And something else I love that you talk about is the importance of having handmade glass instead of buying something that a machine made. So to echo that, something that we're really privileged to do here at the museum is invite you into the artistic process, and supporting an artist is as easy as taking something beautiful home with you that makes you happy. Are there any other questions? How long before we get going again? The team is going to take a quick lunch break.
Yeah, at least half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back at like quarter after. Yeah, cool.
Perfect amount of time to walk
Thanks,
through
you
the
guys.
gallery. But thank you, Gabe. What a pleasure.